Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And I'm here today with our Wednesday co-host, Mike Herzog, who's our resident engineer. How's it going, Mike?
Doing good, David. Reporting from the home studio today, so I apologize for the Legos on the table in the background. This is also the kids' Lego studio in my office.
Well, that's all right. Sometimes things have to multi-purpose, and I see you've got all the plants growing there too. Anything interesting you can smoke there?
No, you gotta go one state west or one state south.
I just want to make sure you're not incriminating yourself on video, right?
No, the worst I've got is Legos, so that's not too bad.
You just have to say you're broadcasting from Colorado.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Oh man. So I want to start out today with an interesting offering from General Motors for the Defense Department. So they've made a prototype vehicle because there's been a move in the Defense Department to adopt some electric vehicle technology for certain applications.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually pretty sharp and futuristic looking. This is a Chevy Silverado ZR2 is essentially what it is. Now, it looks pretty awesome. I'm sure for military standards, you know how the Army has an expression, embrace the suck. I'm sure they're making it as discomfortable as possible or uncomfortable as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But you can easily see where you could mount a machine gun on the top of the cab. There's plenty of room there for mounting ordnance on top of the cab. But this is a armored Chevy truck. It actually has layers of armor, but it's a Chevy Silverado 2500 ZR2. But what's interesting is it runs as an electric vehicle, but it also has a diesel generator.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah,
which
we like that model. I like the way that works.
Yeah. So it's got two electric motors, one on each axle, a 12 module battery pack wired up. A 2.8 liter Duramax turbo diesel keeps the batteries juiced, making this basically a military grade Chevy Volt. GM didn't provide any power specs, but it's basically it'll haul the armored body, 6 passengers, and all the gear that military personnel might need. And it does have.
I follow a lot of government contracting and opportunities out there, and mission sustainability is huge, and looking at innovative approaches and from an energy standpoint. And you think about them logistically and the cost of getting fuel to remote operations and bases, is staggering. So, I mean, if you could have one of these, have a little solar setup, have some micro wind turbines, and basically be powering your vehicles from renewables, there's just from a mission security standpoint, even aside from the cost of and logistics of getting fuels there, it's a big deal. They're looking at it really hard.
So they don't give us any specs on the range with the diesel, the range of just the battery alone, and all that. Let's just assume it's kind of like the Ram 1500 REV that's got the 150 mile battery pack that has the gas generator. So this one has a diesel generator. This is designed to use the regular diesel that the military hauls around for all their other vehicles, to make it easy to use. But when there's a couple things that are really cool about this. For starters, it's hard to detect because in silent drive mode, it cuts the diesel engine, relies only on battery power, so it doesn't have a heat signature. Okay, so there's no heat signature and it's quiet. It's hard to detect with thermal imaging. They didn't provide specs for how long it can operate without the diesel engine running, but I guess that isn't information we need to know. That's all.
That's funny, that silent aspect of it, where it's, you have to artificially pipe in backup noise when an EV is going because it's so quiet. But when you look at it for that application, it's a plus. Like, you can go into silent mode with that thing.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. So as they've discovered in the war currently in Ukraine, Ukraine has extensively used e-bikes. And they found that just being able to be silent around the battlefield has its own inherent advantages, that and the thermal imaging, so people aren't seeing the engine just light up in the middle of the night. What's interesting is this thing is also can be automated, so it's ready for unmanned operation as well. So I guess it could be operated remotely. It's got a few features you'd have in a normal car, like anti-lock brakes, stability control, 360-degree camera system. Has armor add-ons. You can just, and the article is kind of funny. It's saying, okay, we'll take the frag grenade resistant underbody kit, and we'll
yeah, the website, and do you want the undercoating with that?
Yeah, and would you like the 50 cal machine gun mount and Apple CarPlay and yeah, it was pretty funny. It's like you definitely really need the Apple CarPlay, and Android Auto. But I thought that was kind of cool. I like seeing stuff like that, and because you always think about, it's like, well, where are you going to charge that EV out in the field? Well, this basically gets the best of both worlds, and that it's like you're saying, they could have some solar panels out there, but realistically, if you had solar and you had the thing sitting all day under some kind of solar panel, it's going to charge up like 10 miles.
It's not going. No,
it's not unless you had like a huge. When I say that, that would be if you only covered the top of the truck. Now, if you had something that was like 5 times the size of the truck, yeah, you'd probably put 50 miles on there a day.
Yeah.
Is that sufficient?
I'm talking more. They're looking at a lot of like forward operation bases and energy resilience for those and what it looks like. Just knowing how much of a target the grid is. So especially in foreign countries and in conflict zones, it's, hey, we have a forward operating base. Like, we want to be able to unfold a bunch of solar panels and power the base, and do things like that. So it's not like, covering the armor with solar panels just to make it extra reflect. It's more, hey,
extra reflective
operating base. You're still covering something new as well, or another element of your energy needs potentially with that, rather than having to maybe trucking as much diesel. I don't know. It's cool. I mean, it's a sharp looking vehicle. I like the way it looks for sure. I mean, that's you could see that's got that Hummer type feel to it, or Humvee.
Oh, it definitely does. It definitely does. It looked very futuristic. All right, so I want to get into an interesting topic that we may have here. So the U.S. opens applications for $900 million for small nuclear reactors. So Jennifer Granholm was having a chat about doing this, and it's for initial domestic employment of small modular reactor technology. Now, when I think of government spending money and we talk about energy, $900 million doesn't really sound like a whole lot of money when we're talking nuclear.
When you're talking,
okay.
Not at all.
No, I mean, your minimum cost of investment generally to put up a nuclear power plant is in the billions. And, so we're talking something, and I don't know, when they say small modular, exactly how small we're getting here. Has simpler designs, can be scaled to demand. Backers say they're inherently safer and will be less costly because they can be built in factories rather than at a site. It can be used to generate heat or power and used for desalinization.
This has been a huge topic in the utility space and energy space. After the past 5 or 10 years, I mean, a large nuclear plant's a non-starter, just because of the cost, with everything associated. You can't do anything with it. But this idea that SMR, small modular reactors, are, I think, the future. I would love to see more of it. All of those things come to it. Just makes sense to me. And if this is just to get some designs off the table or pilot or what it looks like, I'm happy to see more investment in this space for sure. Even though $900
I think that's a lot of it.
Isn't, no, it's not going to go very far, but it's something to see.
Well, when we talk about the Inflation Reduction Act as an infrastructure bill was $1.8 trillion, and we start talking about 900 million for nuclear. We dropped from trillion to billion to million. I mean, $900 million is still a lot of money. Okay. Not saying it's not a lot of money. It's just when you think of some of these kinds of projects, it just, And I think a lot of it was simply to spur more development than it
Mhm.
was anything else. So I don't think that's actually going to result in the creation of any actual nuclear reactors. It's just maybe spurring some
I think that's what
expense into
it's just
startup and design.
sweeten the pot, get more people thinking about it, get more people, considering it strongly, and putting up real capital to actually do things, not just draw it out, maybe test out some components, test out something associated with it. But no, it's not going to cover all of it for sure.
No,
Yeah, I
no,
mean,
it's kind of a drop in the bucket. Now,
mhm.
I have another article talking about nuclear renaissance must still solve for spent fuel. Now, this is a question, I see it's like, well, what are we going to do with all the nuclear fuel? I've always kind of been under the impression a lot of this is overblown. Okay. And the reason I say that is, okay, so we all know that in World War II, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan, right?
Mhm.
Okay. And we've kind of been led to believe that nobody'd ever be able to inhabit where nuclear detonation ever occurred, right? But Hiroshima and Nagasaki are both thriving cities now. Okay. Now, take a wild guess at the number of nuclear detonations there's been in since 1945.
Oh, I bet it's huge when you look at all the island testing and Nevada test sites and places like
But
that.
what would you consider to be huge?
Thousands? I don't know. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
more
something like
than
about 4,500. There's about like
4,500. Yeah.
4,500 nuclear tests and detonations have been done. The Soviets used to build canals. They
Mhm.
used to use nuclear detonations to help, where we'd use dynamite, they'd actually use small nukes. Okay. It's like that old joke. It's like, what is it? The United States spent, thousands of dollars to develop a pen that would write in space, and the Soviets
Soviets
used a
used a
pencil.
pencil.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but no, in this particular case, we'd use dynamite, and they'd try
And
to
two birds
save.
with one stone. Like, well, we got to test these bombs out anyway. I mean,
Well, yeah,
might as well clear something out.
right, yeah. So, anyways, but most of those were like I saw there was like a couple of years where there was over 500 nuclear detonations worldwide, like in the
Wow.
60s or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it was really.
And you know, I was always under that impression that I think some things with nuclear are a little overblown. Okay, just like we see stuff with EVs, like we were talking before we came on the show about how there's all these warnings about how all the EVs were going to catch on fire if they
Yeah.
got touched by salt water. And there were EV fires. There was no question. There was actually a lot of them. In fact, there was almost a full year's worth of EV fires just from the two
Just from
hurricanes.
hurricanes.
Helene alone had 17 electric vehicles catch on fire. One house got burned down. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, they weren't responsible for anybody dying. There was hundreds of people died from Helene, and
Yeah.
Milton didn't really seem to be the mass killer. The thing was Helene was really bad because it caused all that flooding
All
in the
the inland
Carolinas, and
flooding.
people died from flash floods. And that really wasn't. They
No, it
expect
wasn't.
flooding in a hurricane zone, but they don't expect it in the countryside and
Well, that's
in North Carolina.
if you live on the Florida coast. I mean, there's a reasonable expectation that you are prepared for a hurricane. I mean, that's an
Mhm.
eventuality. But yeah, no, if you're in Asheville, North Carolina, you are not prepared for hurricane style torrential rain. But
No,
it's what we always talk about with these. Yes, battery fires were a problem. A decade ago, 15 years ago, as the technology was developing. But it's now it's if a vehicle's damaged, like you were saying before the show started, if the seals are broken, if things happen, yes, salt water can short those out absolutely and cause issues. But a brand new EV, no, yeah, if you submerge any car in salt water, it's not going to be good. You're gonna have problems and issues, but it's not. It's not going to hopefully be a all of a sudden catch on fire because of that.
no, there was something that in Florida, 1/4 of all vehicle fires that were caused by the hurricane,
Mhm.
1/4 were EVs. Okay, now of course, there's not a whole lot of EVs compared to
No,
gas
no.
cars.
So
You know,
proportionally, yes, that is a higher
it was a huge deal in that regard, but it wasn't like gas cars aren't catching on fire for various reasons either. We don't know why the gas cars got on fire, and that could have just been normal. Normal gas fires just normally catching on fire because they do that, and people. But the funny
A
thing
tree
is,
falls on it, a power pole falls on it, something like that. That happens. Those things happen.
All right. So, anyways, but going back to this whole thing, nuclear renaissance must still solve for spent fuel. So I found this article from Reuters, and they're so we're trying to address artificial intelligence. All the AI data centers, stuff like that. Like you and I've talked about before, people always want to say, "Oh, there's not enough power in the grid for EVs." It's like, and AI is saying, "Hold my beer."
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Lost your microphone there again.
yeah,
No,
it's
we're talking,
not even close.
Yeah, I mean the analogy of EVs is pennies. Data centers, it's $100 bills coming in. I mean, that's not going to break your bank.
No, it is kind of funny, but let me see here. We have a long-term solution for 92,500 metric tons of nuclear spent fuel piled up at power plant sites around the country. Another 2,000 metric tons is added every year. So to date, there's 92,000 tons, and there's another 2,000 tons added a year. And somehow this is a challenge for what to do with this product. And I don't really know what's going on there, but you've got deals with Microsoft, Google, Amazon, all trying to get into the nuclear power business now.
Yeah.
Because they need the power for their artificial intelligence facilities.
The waste was power, and the thing about nuclear, we call it like base load generation. It runs. It just runs. It's unlike wind and solar. Wind doesn't always blow. The sun doesn't always shine. Ideally, a nuclear modular reactor just runs, and it keeps going for 2 years until you have to do maintenance and refuel it.
Now, here's part of it. So it used to be that a lot of this went to Yucca Mountain, Nevada, but its development was halted by President Obama's administration under political pressure. Currently, the DOE is working on consent-based siting or sending the waste to places willing to take it. But that's, it's like, hey, send your nuclear fuel over here. It's like nobody's just like...
It's not going to be a popular political stance. we're open. Ship your casks of it.
Yeah. So there's about 40,000 metric tons is stored in pools requiring power.
Yep.
And one worry, when the tsunami knocked out power at Fukushima in Japan in 2011, its storage pools would overheat. The later examination showed they did not.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when that whole thing with Fukushima happened, because they were talking about the entire Pacific's going to be radioactive. California is going to have massive problems from the thing, and
currents taken across the ocean.
Yeah, and that was about 99.9% overblown.
Mm-hmm.
There was issues from it. Okay, it's not saying there weren't issues from it, but but it's just, it wasn't doomsday like people were talking about at the time, because I still remember that clear. It's hard to imagine that was 13 years ago now.
Wow, that was long. Yeah, I think it's funny that everything's come back around full circle, where after that happened, it was just like France and Germany. So, well, what are we going to do? And I think Japan even, so we're going to shut down all of our nuclear reactors. And people looked at, you can't do that. You need that generation. And now the industry's back to the point of like, I think nuclear is the answer. I think that's going to be a very useful tool moving forward.
Well, there's 3 well-known nuclear accidents per se, and the 3 Mile Island was definitely the least
impactful. Very close.
Least impactful of the 3. It could have gotten bad,
at the end of the day, it really did not. They're starting that back up too.
I think Amazon.
Yeah.
Or Amazon or Google is one of those.
So
maybe it's Microsoft. It's one of the 3 big tech companies wants it. But the other one was Chernobyl. Chernobyl was really bad, right? There's no question. It was really a bad scene, and that area there is really uninhabitable. Now, then the third one was Fukushima. Fukushima wasn't as bad as Chernobyl.
Nope.
But, you had three major incidents, and then you look at, okay, U.S. company, and one of the problems with Fukushima, it was built on a fault line.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good idea not to build a nuclear power plant on a known fault line, right? So we won't have one in St. Louis. We won't have one in Memphis. There's a few places in California that probably aren't good for one either.
Don't build it in a floodplain either, which is what happened. Our nuclear plant in this neck of the woods, it was in a floodplain, turns out. Now, when they built it, it wasn't, but as that's shifted over time, it was in a floodplain. It's not a great place to operate one of those.
No, probably not a good idea to have one in a conflict zone either.
Yeah.
That Zaporizhia one, I think, is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. And the Russians took it from Ukraine.
Reactors, and it's a heck of a complex.
That's something that really needs to stay out of the fight there. But it's interesting to see. We're not the only country with this problem. Constellation is the largest U.S. nuclear power operator with 12 nuclear power plants in service. Now, I'm wondering if Constellation is actually being bought by Microsoft.
I don't know.
I know they're so one of the two reactors at 3 Mile Island, which suffered the partial meltdown in '79, is the worst U.S. nuclear power accident. The other reactor continued to operate until 2019. I didn't know that, and would be restarted under Constellation's deal with Microsoft. And I know the Soviets had at least one other big nuclear accident that never really got reported. I think it happened in the '60s.
I don't know.
I mean, it was really early on, and there wasn't detection equipment to realize it had happened. But Chernobyl was actually their second major one, and it was probably worse than the other two well-known ones. But I can't even remember where the other one occurred. But I know there was another one in the Soviet Union that the West never knew that it had happened. Whereas Chernobyl, by the time they'd kind of figured it out, it's like, hey, why do we have so much radioactivity in Western Europe? And in Scandinavia, and they finally figured out where it was coming from. But it's kind of interesting to see, and the article doesn't give any real solutions. It really seems like Yucca Mountain is the solution for it, but for some reason, there's been a push against it, and
it was a big deal. If it was Obama in office, I didn't remember who it was, but 10, 15 years ago, I remember it was like the trucks were ready to roll. Like, we need to go take this somewhere and bring it in, and then it was no dice. It was cut off.
All right, so my next topic is, this one's from Motley Fool. It says, should you buy the dip in Tesla following the robotaxi event? I watched the robotaxi event. I saw the thing with the robots, and the robots, though, were apparently very operated by individuals. The robotaxi is a smaller Tesla it's a two-seater. It's a two-seater, so they're not even designing it for like a family ride or something like that. It's designed for one or two people to be hauled around in.
Yeah.
And they're saying it costs like 20 to 40 cents a mile to operate. It's going to be really cheap. Supposedly they're going to be under $30,000 to purchase. And they're hoping to have 100 million of these things worldwide in 10 years. I mean, that would really be staggering numbers, because they don't even produce.
Nobody makes that much. I mean, that would be an amazing ramp up in production. But
I think they make about 3 million cars a year, so that would be an astronomical number of cars to be building. But anyways, Motley Fool goes on to say that they believe you should be buying Tesla right now, because the dip in the price makes it at a significant bargain. The price dropped like 8% after the thing, and I'm like, I thought it was a pretty well done event. The thing is, I think what the disappointment was, so we're in 2020, late 2024. He's estimating before you really see it on the streets, it's going to be 2 more years.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you look at their FSD product. Their FSD product gets better every year, and Waymo's had some challenges. There's issues in that. You better, if you have a Waymo, you better be exactly where you're supposed to be to get picked up, and I don't know what they do if somebody like if it picked up somebody from a bar and they threw up in the car, how does Waymo know
How
that
they figure
somebody
that out.
threw up in there? You know, I mean, there's some things there that
I think they got pretty good camera system in there. I don't know how it's monitored at all. If somebody's it's like an old fashioned security guard with a thermos of coffee watching what's happening there, but I want to say they've got really good cameras on the inside.
they probably do. Well, there's a couple of differences between Waymo and FSD. For starters,
Mhm.
FSD is just a computer. Waymo actually has, I don't know, it's self-driving, but in certain circumstances, a human takes over. So at some point, it tells somebody in some remote location to take over driving that car.
Mhm.
And um, I don't know what those situations are. If the computer is like, this is something we don't quite get.
Yeah.
If the car is stuck for a little bit, who knows? There's some way that humans are monitoring it and know to jump and take over the controls of
Mhm.
that automobile. Whereas as far as I know, that's not the intent with robotaxi, although it could be easy enough still to do that too, right?
I would think so. You just have a
Yeah.
couple of people monitoring a dozen vehicles or a couple dozen vehicles, and if something happens, they jump in and yeah,
And take over.
pump
Yeah,
the
I mean,
brakes.
I don't think that's a real big challenge, but I would agree with that. It seems to me, you know, Tesla's coming along. You know, the thing is, it's funny because I talk about this a lot in that you have companies that either have access to you may have a great idea, you may have the greatest idea in the world, but you have to have a leader who can execute and lead people to get things done, right? And you
Mhm.
also have access to the capital to be able to pay for it, to get things done, and to get it done before you run out of money, right?
Yep.
Well, if there's anybody who's ever proven that they can execute on every phase of that, it's Elon Musk. Okay, every company from PayPal, SpaceX, Tesla, his new XAI project. Um, he just seems to
Mhm.
get things done. And I saw something where one of his clusters for artificial intelligence, um, they use, NVIDIA video cards, and they did something in 18 days that was supposed to take years.
Yeah. I,
And
I
yeah,
I'm a take him or leave him kind of guy with when it comes to Elon Musk, but I will say everything I've seen about him, they say his personal work ethic really sets the tone in a lot of those operations, especially in his early days. Like I'm here all the time. I am in the office all of the time. I am in the lab all of the time, and expected that out of the people working for him on those projects too, which is why I think that really set the tone for how those things move forward and quickly.
yeah, he was trying, as opposed to waiting to get things done in months, he was trying to get things done in days,
Mm-hmm.
and was often quite successful at it. And the thing is, a lot of times you're able to execute things really quickly. It brings up a cost savings that's really hard to measure, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just the way it is. Because as time goes on a project, the money just seems to drain.
Oh
It
yeah,
doesn't matter what you're doing.
no matter
Um,
what you're doing, yeah. Once you fall
but
behind, yeah, it's a pool. It just keeps sinking into it.
Yeah, and I see people all the time argue. It's like, oh, Tesla's stock is going down or whatever. It's like, well, it goes up and down, but I just can't see betting against it. Um, there are companies that, well, you've heard me disparage certain companies that
Mhm.
I just don't think they know what they're doing. But who knows? So the next one I'm going to talk about is a company that's on the NASDAQ. It's called Phoenix Motors. Phoenix is a bus maker out of Phoenix, Arizona, and their stock symbol PEV. Anyways, they're obviously they make transit buses, and anyways, they have announced that they're delivering 4 electric transit buses to the University of California, San Diego, they're to be delivered in early 2025, so just in a few months. The
That's not bad.
35-foot electric buses from Phoenix EV will be deployed to decarbonize the last mile transportation. Oh, here we go, more buzzwords. It's always funny, reducing particulate emissions on
Yeah.
campus and the neighborhoods around the university. You know, um, That there was a comment from UC San Diego, and it's true. I mean, I remember riding on school buses, and you always had the windows open,
Yeah.
and the diesel
You
smell comes
smelled it. It
right
smelled like
into.
Neese. It smelled like a school bus. Yeah.
Right, yeah, there was it's a distinct smell you have riding around in a school bus, and it's like,
Especially, yeah,
in hindsight.
you always wanted the back row when you were a kid, but boy, you got some fumes back there.
Right, but I'm just saying that probably wasn't good for us,
No.
but we didn't know any better, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, I just thought that was something good to see. um but like I said, that's all they pretty much make is electric buses out of
Mm-hmm.
Phoenix, and they seem to do
Right.
okay. I don't really ever hear much news about them, and so I just thought I'd mention that because buses obviously are part of the electric vehicle market.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah,
so,
yeah.
so,
Especially,
so I
it's
got
one of
kind of
those
a
fixed route. It's a fixed route. It parks in the same place every night. I mean, it's a buses are great candidates for that in the long term.
So, we see all these wild claims about how lithium is like some rare element, and, we get all of our lithium from China or something like that. When in reality, we get most of our lithium from Australia, right? It's just
Mm-hmm.
that the batteries are produced in,
In China. Yeah,
China's the big
all the
leader
batteries.
in battery tech.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
there's no question. I mean,
No question. Your batteries coming from China. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, you can get cheap batteries from China that might set your e-bike on fire and things like that. But, even LG, which is huge in TVs and other things,
Mm-hmm.
they had problems with batteries back 10 years ago. They had a bunch of electric vehicle
Mm-hmm.
battery fires where went back to LG, which is Korean. Um, but China's been done real well. You've got a company like Cattle, which is definitely the leader in battery tech. Well, the news I've got today is General Motors is contributing to investments $625 million in cash and letters of credit to a new joint venture with Lithium Americas. And what this is doing is this is in Nevada. Thacker Pass is the area, a lithium node in Nevada that's the largest in North America and one of the largest lithium nodes in the whole world. Okay. And the United States has sufficient lithium. It's not
Not
been
finding
being
it.
extracted. And the United States has significant investment going on in making batteries in the US. And so this is instrumental in making sure that we have access to battery materials and battery technology here in the United States. And so, a lot of people like to say that we're throwing all of our money to the Chinese. Well, the Chinese are the leader in EVs, right? There's
Yep.
no question.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
And we're not going to pull any punches. We all know that the CCP is not they're not a fair trade country. They do
Mm-hmm.
things to devalue their currency so their stuff keeps appearing cheaper and cheaper, and they increase exports, driving down prices worldwide, which, is one of the reasons why we're trying to prevent China, putting the double,
Yeah.
the 100% tariffs.
Huge tariff. Yeah. Yeah.
And, so there's things there that we need this, we don't just need energy independence on fossil fuels. We need some energy independence in the EV space too.
It's
And
going to be a interesting dynamic here in the next couple of years where that drill baby drill is changing to lithium. I wonder if that's going to have that same impact and go through. And just we are that's always been one of our strengths as a nation. We are resource rich. We have a lot of resources across our country, and yeah, start tapping that internal market, and couple that with the production of United States-based battery manufacturing, and get that supply right in here. I mean, it's years away. I mean, they're still under construction. They're still being developed. But hearing that they're moving forward with domestic mining operations, we got to use it. We have the resources. Let's use it.
well, Mike, so and I know you're all about green energy and all that, but you're also, in grid infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
consulting. I mean, realistically, doesn't use of LNG, because we know coal is going down.
Yep.
Okay, there's many reasons why coal is going down. LNG is probably one of the, for the investment into it
Yep.
is cheap to operate, right? But
Well, and it's not just that, it's on demand. You
mhm.
know, and that's what the grid really needs to survive right now is you need that kind of check and balance where, oh crap, the wind stopped blowing. All right, quick ramp up. Like flip the switch, 5 minutes, these things turn on. Yeah, so it's been more prevalent or as prevalent as renewable development across the space because you have to balance everything with that.
But I mean, when you hear this talk about drill, baby, drill, I know that world petroleum use, even though EVs are growing faster than petroleum use, it's still going up.
Yep.
Every year, it goes up about 5%. I mean, the world demands. You have third world countries who still, most of the people don't have access to vehicles. And so
Mm-hmm.
what's happening is, as you have lots of used cars and different things, you get more and more transportation solutions sort of being dumped into these cheap markets,
Yep.
of things that people in first world countries don't want anymore. And, so you get more energy demands. Those people still need more,
Yep.
trucks driving to deliver products and things like that. But in the United States, with all of our AI needs, we're going to need more LNG. And unfortunately, while we're trying to
Yep.
promote the use of solar and wind and things like that, and obviously, we're all pro nuclear. There's a lot of people in the green space who are really hate nuclear, but at EV World, you and I and Bill we're all pro nuclear.
I think that's the answer, but it's still like we just talked about 15 minutes ago. I mean, it's
Right.
under development, but I think that's the way forward. Now
Yeah.
it's yeah, that's where these things are popping up, and it's just renewables are great, very pro renewable. I want to see those things and go through, but boy, at some point in time, the sun doesn't shine, the wind doesn't blow, and natural gas. I mean, natural gas is what we're relying on right now.
Yeah.
As
So,
coal is just taking a nosedive over the past 10 or 15 years, at least domestically. Hardly any use anymore. No new coal plants for sure, but even existing ones are a challenge.
what's funny is, in all the time we've done the EV World show, we really don't get a lot of great stuff to report about General Motors.
Yeah.
Okay. And, a lot of it's kind of negative or whatever. But, we've had a few things. Remember, they bought the company that makes the GigaPress technology.
Mm-hmm.
That was a few months ago. Okay. Now they're buying a 38% ownership in the Thacker Pass lithium deposit situation, or maybe it's just a mining company. But anyways, they're buying a significant portion into that for the making of batteries. And they've talked about their Ultium tech and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow GM is usually left out of the conversation, on
Yeah.
EVs. And I think it's because so many people felt they botched the Bolt so bad with all the Bolt fires 10 years ago and things like that.
Isn't that weird? I mean, they were a leader. I mean, them and Toyota, like those. I know when those first hybrids and first electrics came out, it was yeah, they were leading that space. The Volt and the Bolt. I mean, cool. Like the Volt. What a great concept.
Oh,
All
yeah.
those years ago, and it's just nowhere to be seen anymore.
No, but they're quietly doing some good things. Like we talked about the truck prototype today. That was
Mm-hmm.
kind of nice because I, one of my criticisms of the Silverado and the Hummer and all that is the fact they've got that 210 kilowatt hour battery, and this is one of the arguments for like Toyota. It's like we only have like a 10 or 15 kilowatt hour battery in our hybrids, and these guys have something that's
A lot.
15 times as big in the Chevys. And but it's good to see something good coming out of that space. It is funny that too, like we always hear like Toyota's saying no to EVs, and at the same time it's like, oh, we're going to put 15 billion into a battery plant in the Carolinas.
Yeah.
you know so it was interesting to see this a while back during the Hurricane Helene thing. There
Mm-hmm.
was some critical stuff in the field of semiconductors. And there was a lot of news about how this was geoengineered to take that up. Anyways, they're back to producing, mining the super quartz they use for that. So I was checking on that, back into that, and they're back in operation
Everything's back in
already.
operation already.
Yeah, so
Good.
It
I mean,
wasn't,
yeah.
you know, it
Mhm.
was interesting kind of to know. This Thacker Pass lithium mine was, it started being, I think they started realizing there was lithium back in 2007. They approved development in 2021 by the Bureau of Land Management. And they started construction there in March of 23. It's an 18,000 acre site, of which 6,000 acres will be mined. But it's up in very kind of northwest Nevada.
So, okay.
It's out in the middle of nowhere,
Nowhere. I mean, there's
essentially.
yeah.
Um, let me see. Some nearby Indian tribes have been opposed to the project. Thacker Pass is a sacred site, a massacre site, and they were not adequately consulted by the Bureau of Land Management. No BLM study has found evidence of a massacre site within the mining area or the extended area, but who knows? I'm sure there's.
I mean, I know the challenges of, and anytime you put a hole in the ground of everybody who needs to be consulted and looked at, and I hope they make it right, whatever that means or whatever it looks like. But I know the paperwork I've had to fill out for a tiny little project of our, what is it, the Artifacts and Antiquities Act or something like that, where you have to have, yes, somebody had to have gone out and done a lot of research, or environmental protection is a big one, or beetles, or little things like, and I shouldn't roll my eyes at that. It's important. We need to be good stewards of our land and everything like that. But just, I've been through these steps on tiny little projects, so I can't imagine, that everything wasn't checked out for an 18,000 acre mining operation. I got to believe somebody did their homework on that, or somebody was there to check their homework to make sure they actually did it. But,
I remember at a local zoning meeting or whatever, I was trying to get some property approved for zoning. It was beside a Navy base, and the Navy base had to send somebody out to say that it was possible that an aircraft engine could fall into the neighborhood at some point. And so, of course, the question asked was, okay, the base has been here since the start of World War II. How many times has that happened? Well, never, but it could happen. And, it was just kind of funny. So this, according to something I found on the Thacker mine, they're saying it's going to create 300 long-term jobs in rural Nevada, paying an average of $63,000 a year. So that's not bad in of itself.
I wonder if you'll get those old boom towns, like the old silver mining operations. Some of those old, that are now defunct Western ghost towns. If some of that gets revitalized out in those rural parts.
So I've got a few other little things. So in September, global EV sales jumped year over year by 30.5%. So that was a pretty big jump. Now, most of that occurred in China, and Europe was close behind. The US only had a 4.3% increase from the prior year. But it's building in the United States.
That's
30% worldwide growth year
crazy.
over year in September. Now, the thing is, sometimes it's hard to take 1 month and extrapolate that into a whole year, because it's like, well, there were some months it wasn't like that. And so, I like to try to take things with a grain of salt.
If you ever look at like what happened in the world during that month, was last September when the ship got stuck in the Suez Canal. Stuff like that is like, oh, okay, there was an anomaly a year ago and bumped it up, but it's a provocative number. That's good.
Oh yeah, when that ship turned sideways, got stuck in the Suez Canal. It's like, oh my God, how crazy that. And then you saw like a picture of like a crane beside the ship, and the crane looked like you had to like get up close because it was so tiny compared to the ship.
I know, you look at it, it's like, can't they just move a ship? Then you realize how big it is. Like, oh no, they can't just move that.
No, they couldn't just get a bunch of camels and a few small trucks and hook it up to the front of the ship and try to pull it out. It's like, no,
not figure out how they built the pyramids. Move it that way.
Yeah.
But no, I agree with you. It's year over year. If you see that trend continue for the next couple of months, but it's just, was there severe weather? Was there severe flooding in China last year? Or issues like that. So it's cool to see. It's a fun number to see, but let's see what it looks like over the next couple of months too.
All right. Well, Mike, I think we've covered enough for today. We've been on a while. Anyways, I want to thank you for being on, and
Oh, it's a
folks, I want to
pleasure.
thank y'all for listening to us rant about all the different things that we've seen today in the EV space. And Mike will be back with me next week, and I'll have Bill with me in here